Gonna do different one, but
It's like, you know, walk by it.
the mountains that I hike.
It's a bit-
And so it's a really good,
It's fun.
it's not as high.
Mike, have you received notice, the missing members of your?
Laughlin, there's a really.
Drew was under the weather a little bit.
Glad to see you're good. Good exercise.
Mayor Solkey's also on one.
Subcommittee, it is up to 6, and tonight is our last scheduled meeting for budget, so it's do or die tonight. The good news is a lot of it is pretty much nuts and bolts with operating the enterprise funds, our sewer, our water, et cetera. So that being said, I will reconvene come out of recess.
Oh, yeah.
City recorder, please call the roll.
Councilor Bland.
Here.
Councilor Stratton. Here. Mayor Solsky.
Here.
Councilor Dreer.
Present.
Councilor Merida.
Here.
Councilor Senate.
Here.
Committee member Amanda Gill. Here. Danny Solsky.
I'm here.
I think Danny actually acknowledges here.
Yes. Danny, I'm going to probably feel comments as well. So that you can just raise your hand and ask questions. Danny, I can see you online. You just want to acknowledge verbally that you can hear us.
Sorry about that. I'm a little late to the game. Danny's here.
Thank you. Charlie Sales.
Here.
Amber Bailey.
Here.
Barry Manning.
Here.
We'll open by a few housekeeping notices with our city manager.
Well, good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Just a couple of quick items. Wanted to let you know that Bohemia Mining Days has withdrawn their request for funds. And also, Bert, our finance director, has passed out a chart to you talking about cash carryover that she wanted to briefly discuss with you.
I've had the opportunity just before the meeting started to meet with some of you individually, but I will explain, and then glad to have a discussion with you outside of this meeting if you'd like, so that you may have a better understanding of what's in the graph. It's going to depict your actual revenue, carryover, expenditures, unappropriated fund balances for 19 and 20 through 22, 23. And in 23, 24, the year that we're in now, will reflect budgeted numbers. At the end of the day, it reflects that your cash carry forward is coming down, your expenditures have been going up, and it simply put the $3,591,000 that we put in the budget actually is 754. I need my glasses on. So that's what is creating the $1.1 million difference between budget and actual. So hopefully it depicts it well enough that you can see how our expenditures are increasing and our cash carry forward was being spent all within a legal budget, because we're only setting aside about 500 or a little bit more, 500,000 or a little bit more to walk in with in the budget process for the next fiscal year. This year we're at $600 and some thousand to walk in with next year. And I think that over time, we're going to do some research and bring to the council, maybe at a work session or in between now and next budget year, on how to increase that carry forward. That's the unappropriated fund balance that becomes your carry forward to a state where we are stable and not expecting just not to spend all the expenditures, but actually have the plan where it's recognized, it's money that's guaranteed to walk in with. So any questions, I'd be happy to field those either now or on one-on-ones later, or however you'd like to approach it.
Finance Director, Likens, could you explain to the group the apparent gap that you?
Sure. So because you only put $500,000 in an unappropriated in fund balance, everything is budgeted to be spent, correct? It's at a contingency. However, it's within that general fund. If you add up all the revenue and that cash carry forward, that will equal your unappropriated fund balance and all of your expenditures. So if this year had been completed, it would look very similar to the year before, but we're in the midst of a budget year. So what I did to reflect what the difference was only put in the budgeted numbers.
Sure. Quick question. Do we have this available to send electronically to the folks online?
I do not believe I have it electronically. Another department helped put this together for me. I'm sorry, but I could be glad to provide that just as soon as possible.
I'll just offer thank you. This is awesome. I'm not much of a graph guy normally, but I really appreciate this. This is awesome.
Thank you.
Are there any other housekeeping duties?
There are not.
By my record, we were on.
Sound.
Yeah.
It's because they play with the pop. Danny, were you wanting to speak? Your hand was raised.
Okay, you kind of sound went away there for a second. Hey, Mr. Sourwine, would you hold that up to your camera right behind you? And I'd like just a glance of that. It looked really nice. I just kind of wanted to see what it all looked like.
I don't know what it is.
Oh, yeah.
You can do a screen share.
Here, there you go.
Great, good job. Thank you.
I see. Okay, there.
Perfect.
Little more to twist, no, the other way.
There you go.
Perfect.
Sir.
Thank you, sir.
Danny, I'll be more than glad to get that out to you in a document. I don't have access to it right now, or I would post it now. I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. It's fine. It's great. Thank you, sir.
Email.
I apologize. Where were we at?
I had the
Email it to you. and you can forward it
this
to me.
fund on page 98. Anybody has a different recollection?
Left.
Was loan proceeds of $1 million. And was that part of our?
So I guess I can go ahead and start walking us through this. So on the revenue side, we are noticing a little bit of an increase in gas tax now later on in this year. So we're projecting a slight bump in our local gas tax. And then the state highway apportionment number is based on what LOC predicts our share is going to be of the state tax proceeds. And this is, I think, the last projected increase in the transportation bill that was approved. I think it was the Transportation 2000, House Bill 2000, that increased registration fees and gas tax. This is the last projected gas tax increase for that bill. And then you'll see that there's reimbursement. This is the projected reimbursement for the contractual work that was done to clean up the ice storm. And then finally in here is a $1 million loan proceed. And that's to do some projects that I can explain now if there's any other questions on revenue, we could talk about the actual, what those would be for in the fund.
Can I ask a quick question? Bert, on these new pages, is it just that one HR position that was taken out? Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
So if you go to the street fund and the budget, these there's really no changes in the street maintenance portion, except that I would note that equipment and vehicle repairs are up. There was the equipment was used a lot harder through the last 2.5, 3 months than normal. Dump trucks for all and brush and equipment to load, so there was a lot more repairs. I would also note that we have a new mechanic, and the mechanic has been able to take on more work than the previous individual. So we're seeing a little bit more aggressive maintenance work and routine maintenance to the equipment. So that drives up the costs and the material costs a bit. And then finally, in the street sweeper fund, we are transferring the vehicle repair item from storm to the street sweeper fund. And then in the capital, street capital improvements, it's where these projects I'm recommending that we do is to borrow the $1 million, which would pay for 6 chip sealing projects. The chip sealing projects that I'm proposing is South Gateway from Main Street to Taylor. And these projects are all the scrub seal and 2 coats of 3/8 material over the top with a sealer on top of it. Same process we did on North River Road. We would also go through, there's several areas there that need to have some rutting repaired and some potholes fixed before we would get the road in shape, or all the roads in shape for the chip seal. The second one is East Whitaker from Gateway to Thornton. Some of you that drive that stretch, we have completed the pothole repair. So the next step would be to do the chip seal over the top of it. And that'll be very similar to the other roads. Thornton to Mosby, it's a little short connector, gets a lot of heavy traffic from trucks. So it's starting to Alligator, so felt it was important to address that and try to preserve the surface as long as we can before it starts to fall apart. Our street from Main to the high school, so that stretch of road is used a lot. There's a section between Harrison and the high school that for some reason has just really started to deteriorate quickly. So the intent is to preserve that road and also try to enhance that section that's deteriorated. South River Road from Harrison, that would include the Harrison intersection. I'm sure Mike travels that pretty regularly. It's pretty rough. So and the intent is to patch that like we did on the East Whitaker and then overlay it with chip seals. And then the last one is North 16th Street from Main Street to Ostrander. We would go through there and aggressively attack the potholes with the hot patch, and then do a really good scrub and chip seal over it. The contractor really believes that section of 16th Street closest to Ostrander, I think it's either from Chamberlain or from maybe even Curry to Ostrander, where it's just really returning itself to gravel, and believes with the chip seal product that you'll be able to revive that surface and improve it and extend the life. So it's kind of to me, a little bit of an experiment, but anything we can do there will drastically help that situation. And the funding would also address the resources to do the hot patching and the potholes, and also do spot patching. So there's, I think, 5 or 6 pretty decent potholes on Monroe Street between 10th and 8th Street that need to be repaired. There's some potholes on Harrison that through the kind of the S-curve portion of Harrison. So we try to take resources and get those at least protected so that they don't deteriorate any further, and also improve rideability. I would share with the group that the East Whitaker portion, it got to the point where we were receiving regular claims on our insurance because of potholes, popping tires and ruining wheels. So just felt it was, we need to do everything we can. The other thing is we've had a recommendation from our street ad hoc committee that was presented to council, and that we'll be working on some revenue enhancement opportunities. And I believe that showing the citizens in the community over the next, from July to September, what we can do with $1 million may help show them what, if they could make $1 million a year investment for the next 5 years, what that would look like in our community.
Sorry, good question. I know you said what the revenue was from. Is it just carryover? I don't remember.
The revenue is actually to go receive a loan, $1 million loan. And then I think the debt service was 230,000 a year. So we're going to eat in. If we don't come up with some revenue enhancement, we're going to reduce our capital or our preservation projects by that debt service that we're going to have to pay the loan back with.
Oh, no, that's great. Thank you. And then also, I'm assuming any revenue we would derive from a potential, bond or gas tax wouldn't be in this budget. I'm assuming it'd take probably into the next budget season before we'd actually see any of that revenue.
I believe if it's a gas tax that we could probably see it take place sooner than later. I think it could actually benefit this proposed budget that we're talking about. But if we do a property tax measure with a bond measure, I don't believe we'll see any revenue that we can count on until the following fiscal year. Because if it passes this November, it wouldn't really impact until the next year, which starts July 1.
Thank you.
I just want to comment that I did receive an email complimenting the Whitaker improvements.
Thank you.
It's been noticed.
Yeah.
Questions? Thank you. Has anyone expressed any interest in an LID after we presented all the options?
I haven't heard anything from anybody, but as we start to receive new complaints or concerns about specific streets, and if they're residential, then I would start having those conversations with those individuals and see if they feel their neighbors would be interested in pursuing that. So I've been focused on the two items that need to be prepared for November to start with.
Then the other question was, do you have just an estimate of how long it might prolong the life of these really poor streets? Like might buy us another few years or longer?
The expectation of what we did on North River Road, they said that they expect it to last 12 years. So we could actually see some pretty extended life in these areas that we apply this method to. And I would cautiously watch the north end of the 16th Street around Ostrander, because to me, it's a little bit of an experiment. It's almost back to gravel itself. So.
Thank you.
Any other questions on the street fund?
Last year, wasn't there some mention about some kind of toll or for out of town? That was talked about. Did that ever go anywhere?
So what the ad hoc committee recommended to the council, and the council supported, is to go to the legislature to create a road maintenance and improvement district.
Okay.
And utilize a larger boundary like South Lane School District. And the premise would be to be able to use a mechanism similar to a registration fee, just a per year vehicle cost that would be collected at registration. Okay. So the assessment fund, I guess, is another one that's mine. It's next. That really just is a placeholder. There is some rollover resources that will roll over each year. But at the present time, this is where if we were to create an LID, this is where the LID funds would come. The project would be paid for out of it and then repaid through this fund. Looks like the next one is up with.
Exactly related to streets, but what's the extent of the improvements that are available in an LED? Is it just for like sidewalk?
I believe it's all the utilities and the street sidewalks, everything that would be a public improvement project. So one of the LIDs that was being considered when I first got here that the city engineer was working on, but it never happened, was a sewer stormwater LID on North River Road up to Bennett Creek to take services up to those houses in the corner and then be able to facilitate his services if anything changed with the Hidden Valley Golf Course. But there hasn't been any need to pursue that at this point. So that's been my experience. But my understanding is that we would do all those utilities potentially through an LID.
Guided by Oregon law. And there's ORS, what you can do in an LID, very specific.
Not installing solar on your roof?
I
No,
don't think so.
not yet, maybe they'll.
Talk to the Energy Trust, they're pushing.
The next section is police communications, which is police communication support and also the 911 services. Are there any questions on this, or Chief, do you want to have any comments, or?
Cut and dry. You guys have any questions, happy to answer them.
Seems that when you reorganized the department, that shifted some of the budget, how it's prioritized.
I did not reorganize the department, but when my predecessor probably did, yeah. I don't know what it looked like in previous years, but yeah. Bert can probably talk a little bit about how that worked last year during the budget process. It's like for where we're at, yes.
This is considered a special revenue fund, and it's that way because we receive taxes only for a specific. So it's always been this way. You have a transfer out of the general fund to support this because 911 taxes begin to cover the expenses that we have. So there's really been no change budgetarily, but there is a change with how we did staff it.
Right.
So it's always been set up this way. The percentages did not change from what we applied to general fund and what we applied here. However, general fund then puts money into this special revenue fund to support the rest of the expenses covered by 911 taxes.
That would reflect, we did get the contract with South Lane Fire to add to this. We were not doing theirs, or was that?
No, we do not contract with South Lane Fire to do dispatching for them. They go through Central Lane.
Contract with Central Lane. So all the 911 calls, if you dial 911 in Cottage Grove, it will come to South Lane. So they will, like, if it's fire EMS call, 911 rings into South Lane. They take the information and then they transfer it up to Central Lane, and Central Lane will dispatch that call out.
From medic call.
For medical and fire, yeah. So police, everything comes in and back out through South Lane. So they dispatch all law enforcement calls.
And the fire district has a budget meeting Thursday where one of their members may ask them about that again. And may ask them that every single year.
If they'd like to give us a pile of money to hire more dispatchers and come back, I'd love to have a conversation about that. So.
Well, I think there may be some opportunity. I know that Central Lane has raised their rates dramatically over the last few years. So who knows?
We are significantly understaffed in dispatch right now. And to the point to where, I mean, I've been here 8 months and we are running 24/7 dispatch service with 4 employees. So we are, I guess the best way to put it is that we are at crisis staffing levels. So that for us to take on anything else at this point until we can get our own staffing stabilized and our own funding figured out, and we're able to staff what we're currently being asked to do, it'd be really challenging for us to take on any other extra duties. So until we have a model in place that supports what we're being asked to do right now.
Is that for budgeted or just that we only have 4 at the moment?
6 budgeted and
Thank you.
so, which is really probably one what we need as a bare minimum. So ready, budgeted for less than what we need. And the challenge becomes, can you run a 24/7 operation with one person on at all times and still allow people to take a vacation or go to training or have days off? I mean, all of those kind of things. And so when you figure having somebody in a chair 24/7, 365 with no disruption in service, and you're doing that with 4 people, certainly not sustainable. So, and right now we're trying to get, we have a 5th person that we brought on who we're training, and we still have 1 vacancy left that we are struggling to get applications even for the position. So,
Good job.
it's a very hard job. It's a very demanding job. And when you think about the stress that goes along with it, it's tough right now to recruit for those positions.
If you're still not going to be adequately staffed, even with what's budgeted, have there already been prior conversations about how to get adequately staffed and what the trade-offs are? I mean, are these people getting burned out where they're going to leave, or are calls just not being answered timely and people are dying, or like?
So are they burned out? Yes, absolutely. And I mean, I'm not going to sugarcoat that. They are burned out. My staff in the 911 center are really, I mean, they're burned out. And they are holding on, being hopeful that we get to full staff. So as far as what happens if, and I was just on the phone with the director of the 911 program at Oregon Emergency Management today. I had a meeting with him, and I had our captain in there who oversees the 911 center. We were meeting today to talk about worst case scenario. If we have a person leave or out sick or take an extended leave of absence, if we just cannot bring anybody in the door, what happens? The 911 calls don't go unanswered, but that burden gets shifted to a different public safety answering point, which is in our agreement at Central Lane. But again, Central Lane is not going to dispatch for Cottage Grove for free either, right? So, I mean, they'll do it in an emergency situation, and we're working to put a more solid MOU in place. So we have a defined agreement there, but we have a disaster recovery plan, and then we also have a jurisdictional plan that are some documents I got from OEM today to review, to look at how our 911 center can remain viable. So yeah, well, and as part of looking at overall funding for the police department, you know, in the future to stabilize or to make sure that we have the funding that we need to run, that they are encompassed under the Cottage Grove Police Department. So they are part of the department. So if any funding were to come in, it's coming in for Cottage Grove PD, which includes that. So we'd have to figure out how we staff everything. So, and with this current budget, you know, we're tightening the belt. So there's no expanding this year. And we'll have to look at what we get as far as funding moving forward and into the future and what that looks like. So.
If we do have to run into the alternative dispatchers, do we have is that part of contractual services that we would be paying those bills out of, or do we have a budget for?
So what would happen if we don't really have an agreement in place for how funding would shift, right? So what would happen probably, like, say there's a shift that we just can't staff. And this actually happened during the ice storm. We were down staffing, and then we had one dispatcher that was on for, I think, 16 straight hours before we finally had to send her home to get some sleep and to come back the next morning. We had two dispatchers that were stranded and literally couldn't get here. We had to, and this is part of how this works. We had to work with OEM and Lumen to basically flip the switch. It's not as easy as that, but you flip the switch and the calls get rerouted to central lane. And they took our calls for a period of time before we could get a dispatcher back into the chair and then start taking those 911 calls again here. So we don't get billed for reimbursement costs or anything else. But that's part of the service that or the agreement with how 911 works throughout the state and how it's managed. So anytime there's a disruption in service, those calls are designed to just not go anywhere. But a couple of years ago, they had a active shooter in Bend. I don't know if you guys heard about that, but they had an active shooter at Safeway in Bend. And so their 911 system was inundated and basically overrun. And then it started shifting calls because they were getting too many calls in. So it would shift them to the next primary answering point that they could get to. So it was, there were 911 center outside of Deschutes County that was receiving calls about this shooting that was happening. So it's designed so the calls don't just go off to nowhere, right? And the way it's set up here in Lane County, the South Lane 911 Center, it's designed that those calls will go to Central Lane. And so it could happen the other way. There was a major incident in Eugene and their center got inundated. It could then start shooting calls out to Florence to West Lane and shooting calls down here to us to South Lane. So but long term, if we were to come to a point to where we only have 3 dispatchers on staff, and we couldn't staff 24 hours, and we would have to close, there would be hours where we wouldn't be able to operate, then yes, we would at some point have to figure out with state how we are going to route those calls. But and then what that would look like as far as it.
So, I mean, presumably, this is a regional safety net that's clearly designed to fail over. Are there guidelines set by them to be participators in this network of minimum staffing levels? Is there accountability from them being at some point? That was just, you don't pick up the phone and it gets routed kind of thing.
That was the intent of my meeting today with OEM. And that was one of the questions I asked was, well, what does happen if 2 employees just come in tomorrow and say, hey, look, we're done. We're not going to do this anymore. We're out and we have no applications, no nothing. We have nobody to staff this. Like, what happens, right? There's funding that comes in through the 911 tax. And that was kind of what Bert was talking about. I looked at the numbers for a quarter. We got, I think, $43,000 that we can use towards personnel. And that doesn't even move the needle, right? When you're talking about full wage and fringe on an employee and what you can get out of that. So it's certainly not enough to staff it. So yeah, we have to have some conversations, big picture at some point. And I think they're running into this in other places around the state as well. So I was told that one of the state representatives out of Eugene has been looking at different options for how 911 centers are funded and staffed. So there's some very high level, big picture conversations going on right now. But for us here in Cottage Grove, we're trying to figure out how to get the 6 dispatchers filled and trained. So we can staff it 24/7 and still be able to.
When was the last time we had 6?
I don't know. It hasn't been 6 since I've been here. We have 5 right now that we have, 1 in training who can't work. So we still only have 4 on the schedule. 5 is the highest we've had since I've been here. And I think it's the highest we've had in a while. It was not staffed at that for several months before I got here. And we have not gotten to 6 yet. So.
I was gonna say it was in last fiscal year or the
Yeah.
fiscal year before that. I know it occurred when we had the transitioning in the police department with interim chief growth. And then things progressed from there, but I believe we were fully staffed at that point, but I couldn't absolutely swear to that. But I want to say that we had 6 dispatchers at that time. We had a lead dispatch and then 5 others.
It's been a year and a half or more.
Correct.
When we were talking about police officers onboarding, you gave the example that if you were to have somebody start Monday, they wouldn't actually have boots on the ground until another 10 months.
Yeah.
What's the lead time
It's-
for dispatchers?
It's significantly quicker for a dispatcher. So you're probably looking at realistically, when you bring them in the door, probably 90 days before we can get them, fully trained and ready to work a shift by themselves. And then the way their training academy works, they only go for, I think it's 3 weeks now. It was 2. I think they just changed it to 3, which is obviously significantly shorter than a 4-month police academy. So, but it's much less time for that they spend at the academy. So.
Thank you.
Other questions with police communications? Product forfeiture fund. An artifact hunt.
I'm gathering we don't ever get any vehicles or anything anymore from drug bus, right?
Well, Bert and I talked about that, and so what's happened over the years is the equitable sharing program is the official title for it. It has not gone away. And really, there still exists an opportunity for us. So rather than close the account and make it go away and just get rid of it, it's beneficial for us to keep it there, because if we're getting ready to next month, hopefully, if everything goes well with the police staffing, we're going to try to get a detective position filled. My intent is to have somebody in that position that can work investigations with some of our federal partners on different things. So if we're able to do that, then there does exist the possibility that we could get things like that. And whether it be a vehicle, there's not a lot of benefit in trying to, take over a vehicle, because most of the time there's not a lot of value in them. And we had one that we just finally got rid of that sat out at Public Works for a while. I don't know that it was ever used, but I think we just took it to auction. So, but if there's major, cash seizures or, things like that related to illegal activity, we would be eligible, depending on our level of participation in those investigations, to receive some of that. So it's worth keeping it open, even though right now, what's the balance in it, Bert? It's not much, right? Like 8,000.
400.
Years ago, it was huge. They changed the law to where you have to convict somebody, something I agreed with completely.
Yeah.
Before.
Years ago at the state level, it was different, right? And so there's really not much going on with civil forfeiture at the state level. It's those federal level major felonies. Like if you were to come across a major drug trafficking organization that rose to the level of federal investigation, say we partnered with the FBI or the DEA in a major investigation, and they did a federal level asset forfeiture, we would be eligible to receive some of that, a percentage of that based on, like I said, based on our participation. So it does benefit us to do that. And that money, when we get it, it's encumbered what we can use it for. So you can't supplant or do things like that. But what you can do when you get that is you can use it to pay for equipment and training to further the mission of your police department, right? So it's beneficial. There's, I mean, $8,400 is $8,400. We'll take whatever's in there, but we'll keep it open and leave it. And we'll see what happens down the road. But yeah.
Gilbert, did you have a question?
I was curious about this in relation to 110 reform. And if there was any direction, my understanding is that there's some discretion involved in the application of, first time offense versus next, the progression.
Yeah.
And so I wondered if this comes back on the table in that, not just civil asset forfeitures, but in drug enforcement. And I wonder if you could speak to that as a department direction.
Like the direction of drug enforcement relative to being able to now enforce the law on possession. It's not going to have a significant impact on that, but what it will do, and just, kind of a narcotics 101, right? When you're dealing with people on the street in that position that we're talking about, these deflection programs and things like that, those are not the people that are the criminal masterminds behind this, right? So what it does give you an opportunity to do is to try to begin an investigation, right? And you're going back upstream. So there is, there is a little bit of correlation to that, but it doesn't translate to anything in the asset forfeiture. What we'll be dealing with folks who are just possessing illegal narcotics is really just very low level, very far downstream from where you're talking about civil asset forfeiture stuff, but potential for an impact. So, okay.
Cyclone footpath, you said.
So you might see that there was a large projected revenue and capital improvements in the previous year. And that was because we were applied for 3 grants through ODOT's pedestrian and pathway program, and we didn't receive any resources. So basically zeroed that back out. This year, in getting prices for chip sealing of the streets, I also got prices to chip seal and repair some of our pathways. So the North Regional Park through the disc golf course was heavily used for removing brush, and it's gotten pretty beat up. So the intent is to chip seal those back and use quarter 10 and seal them. So it'll be it'll be in good enough shape that it can be utilized by bicyclists and restored. So that's the intended expense in this fund this upcoming year.
Was it the grant funding that came along with the idea of the basically running that almost like a road machine?
Using the zipper to essentially grind up the existing pavement, repair the and the roots and everything that's damaged the current path, and then recompact it and pave over it. But yeah, that just didn't materialize.
You'll continue on with the building inspection program?
If there's no questions on the bikes and building inspection programs, this program's, I believe, going on its 5th year, actually 6th year, because I prepared the IGA agreements. This will be 6 coming up. It's been an excellent program. All of our partners are very supportive of it. You can see the building permits and the activities. There's been a lot of activity. And what's been nice about this program is that sometimes there's more activity in Veneta than there is Cottage Grove or Coburg. And so it just really seems to balance itself out nicely. And everybody seems to be steady path of workloads. So there's no projected changes to the program other than if the department's community development director is created, then the responsibility to oversee this department may move and shift to the community development director.
I assume we're budgeting no unappropriated ended balance reserve fund for this. Is that how that works?
Well,
Yes, I'm,
There's a contingency of about $25,000. Not typically going to be spent. Again, it's one of those, what we should do, what we have been doing, and this is a repeat of what we have been. There's money that we've anticipated to cover payroll for a period of time. And it's set up where you can transfer money from the reserve into this fund if needed.
so I'm also noticing the reserve fund has no unappropriated ending balance.
so what, at the time of preparing the budget, I mean, this could change tomorrow if somebody walked in. My understanding, there is a developer that's about ready to close on a piece of property and they intend on walking in and applying for 15 duplexes. Well, if 15 duplexes get applied for before July 1st, that changes our whole budget because we've had a sudden influx of resources. What we have done is conservatively say, well, if we don't see any more activity, this is where we're going to be. We don't have a surplus of resources to transfer to the reserve fund, and we're going to eat a little bit of our contingency down to manage the expenses. That being said, we are positive, we're feeling very strongly, unless for circumstances outside of our control, we feel pretty strongly that there's going to be the new apartments at the Pine Meadows, which is the Village Green site, is expected to come in and get permits early fall and expect to start construction thereafter. So we feel good about the projected work that's going to be available, that we're fairly confident is going to happen, and that's going to generate the resources. And once again, our partnership, this program would not be able to be done without our partnership. If we didn't have the three cities as partners, we wouldn't be able to pay for this staff because they end up paying for about 50% of the staffing costs for this program. Okay. Next fund is the EDA grant fund. This is was set up specifically to be able to track the EDA and the state parks grant that we got for the two projects. Would share with you that council will be reviewing the proposed contract for the Bohemia Park project at their next council meeting. So this project will get kicked off in the current fiscal year, but the majority of it will be completed in this upcoming fiscal year. And then the Main Street, we're hoping to be out to bid early January for the Main Street program. So we'll see probably 50%, potentially 50% of the Main Street program project done in this upcoming budget, with it completed by the end of, we're hoping by the end of 2025. Okay. Housing rehabilitation is just another one of those items that has some revenue that has been continued to roll over each year. There's really no changes in this fund whatsoever.
These CDBG dollars?
They used to be, and then they were reused. And I think we only have.
I thought they never got washed, which is why we went with St. Vincent de Paul.
Okay. It was loaned, paid and loaned again. That's what created it available at this point. However, I think we may have had one of those that were not successful in repayment. We still have a lien on that property, which is the reason
We need to keep this open.
that we're leaving it open. I don't know if it will ever sell or if we'll ever get to collect on that. It's not a lot of money. It's about 18,000. But that's what this is.
I was going to say, we should just roll this in with our other funds at, St. Vincent de Paul, if not, but
You could close this fund. Maybe I'd have to look into the requirements of it before I could recommend just closing the fund down, with knowing that we still have that on the books.
right.
capable.
So on to enterprise funds. And the first one is the water fund.
And you do have replacement. As Counselor Fleck pointed out the last time we had an error, and that's been corrected, and the amount was just added to the contingency line. Everything else remained the same.
I would share the significant items in this fund is there's a FCS recommended a 6% increase to keep up with the increased operating costs, which is material services and employee costs. In calculating this out, we actually believe, Bert and I think agree that it does look like these increases are stabilizing the fund, because the previous couple of years we were actually, because of COVID and the increased costs, we're seeing our contingencies diminish in those. As far as the distribution, I would say that we've tried to reduce some of our materials and supplies costs. You'll see an increase in the meters, but the meters is based on we buy meters to supply installing new ones. We get reimbursed. It comes through the revenue, and so it's offset by what developers pay, but it's paid, the materials are bought through this fund. In the water treatment side of things, there is a significant change in employee staffing, and I'll kind of speak to both wastewater and water at the same time. We've been challenged over this last year with the retirement of Eric Schroeder, our former wastewater treatment plant operator superintendent. Have not been able to fill that position. So what we've done, and it's worked the last 6 months, is we've contracted the signing supervisor duties. It's a level 4 a treatment plant operator. He's a superintendent for the city of Albany, and he's providing our signing supervisory duties. And then Ryan Kimball has been providing the employee supervisory duties and ensuring that plant is upkept and purchases are appropriate, and really overseeing the day-to-day activities at the plant. So we've split his duties, so half supervisory at water and then the other half at wastewater. And to make up that difference, we're proposing a half-time. We'd like to hire a individual that, if possible, has water treatment plant operator certification and wastewater treatment plant certification, with somebody that's willing to acquire over time within the next year both those certificates. And so that would, we're proposing an operator, a half operator for water, and then the other half for wastewater. And other than that, those were really the significant changes. I would share with you that water treatment plants is starting to see some of the things that wastewater, I've experienced in wastewater over the last 5 years, is end of life of some of our pumps. Both facilities were built new back in 2009, 8, 9, 10. And because the wastewater treatment plant operates 24/7, 365 days a year, our pumps are at the end of life. Now, our water treatment plant doesn't run 24/7, 365 days. So those pumps have lasted longer, but we're preparing to start budgeting for rebuilds and potential replacements as we see. So we're hoping this year to rebuild 2 significant pumps that we have, large pumps that pump water into the plant and then pump water up to the reservoir. And we haven't noticed significant increases so bad with chemicals. The increases have slowed down in water treatment. But I would share that we've been notified that there's a 12% increase in power costs. We had to factor in. Any questions on water collection or water distribution and water treatment?
In terms of the purple pipe that's going out, is that currently, like, what load of effluent is being absorbed on the golf course and other places? I think the intersection by where the north interchange was getting irrigated that way. But is it all going through those areas? Or is it all being used up by?
Yeah, so this is really kind of a wastewater question, but sure. The purple pipe at the present time, there are times during the summer that we're utilizing all the effluent that we're producing. So we're not putting anything back. There are days when it's raining or there's, the temperature's changed or the atmospheric conditions are such that we don't need the golf course and those areas don't need as much water as they'll take. But there are times when we're putting everything in. Right now, presently, we have the ability to put treated effluent at the golf course, on the hospital property, and the interchange. And we're still in the process of putting pipe down Douglas and trying to get the line to Bohemian Park and Trailhead. Once we get that, then we'll be able to utilize all the effluent that we're producing at the present time and not have to put anything back into the river. If there's nothing in the water, then wastewater, again, the significant item here is a 3% increase is recommended by FCS for a rate increase for wastewater. I would share that if everything holds, they're not recommending that we'll need a final 5-year increase in either of the funds. But that being said, we will start engaging with FCS to create the next 5-year study. And hopefully we'll also include SDC calculations in this upcoming process with FCS. And I explained the staff changes in the treatment plant. I would share that lab testing has gone up significantly. We've had to do more tests in preparation of renewing our discharge permit with the DEQ. That's drove up. And then this past year, mid-year, we received a 20% increase in biosolids costs through Herd Farms. Those were pretty significant increases on the treatment side. And then at the golf course, I would share that significant changes at the golf course that's being proposed is to do a class count study and move the increase the pro shop manager in the pay range to the same as the golf course superintendent pay range, and then hire a full-time pro shop assistant to help manage. At the present time, I'd share with you in April, we had record revenue of $80,000 for the month of April, which was gross revenue from the golf course. And we're on track right now with 2 weeks left in this month to exceed 80,000 for this month. So the golf course activity and use of it is incredible. And our current manager is working 7 days a week. So we won't keep that individual very long if he has to do it too long. So those are proposed changes, and the increase in revenue is proposed to pay for those additional costs and employee costs. Amanda?
I just need to declare that because the budget councils.
Yeah, they really,
I'm sorry, I thought.
By conflict, because the watershed council is written into the water. Fund.
we make a contribution, $2,500 out of each, the water and wastewater fund to the Coast Fork Watershed Council. It really is our intent to be a partnership in improving the riparian zones because it's important for water quality, that our drinking water, and it's also important for our returning our treated effluent back in there. So that's the intent. They've also helped us with tree planting. And then when in the past, when we've had some requirements by DEQ from permit violations, and we've been able to invest in improving the riparian zones, we lean on the Coast Fork Watershed Council to help us identify additional activities that we can do to mitigate those potential fines for violating the discharge permit. So it's a great partnership. And by the way, too, we also have benefit because they've actually supplied the city with a summer intern work individual that's worked in our maintenance side, maintaining trails and parks and various different things. So very grateful on that.
Where's the revenue side of the golf course show up?
It shows up in wastewater, and there's you'll see revenue of wastewater. They
Second one.
okay. So it's 160.
160.
In 160, you'll see that there's a projected 400,000 for golf course fees, pro shop 60,000, and then golf cart rentals 130. We also deli 60, and we have a contract with the hospital that the golf course maintenance staff mows the former driving range, which is hospital property, for close to 12,000 a year. So
Say that again, on the rental properties, that what we sold it for was 12,000? No.
we sold the rental house, and hopefully it closes this week for 325,000.
It's in the process. Okay.
Money will go into reserves and program to use it. We actually purchased some new golf carts that should arrive either at the end of this fiscal year, or the beginning of next fiscal year. And we're looking at using some of those proceeds to chip seal all the cart paths in the golf course.
Does the city manage the disc golf course as well?
I wouldn't say manage so the question is, do we manage the disc golf course? Well, we don't manage the disc golf course. We have a partnership with a club, the Eugene. It's kind of a Eugene disc golf club. It was established. The course was built here locally under the leadership of Tom Cressman, who owns the Granite business here in town. He's kind of since stepped away, and there's been new folks. I work with a couple of new individuals. And so they do a lot of maintenance out there, but you'll see we generally do some heavy mowing with mowers. We'll mow a lot of the tall grass. Over the years, we've spent more time in there with removing down trees and brush. In fact, the last couple of weeks, we've had sporadic days in there trying to clean up storm damage and cut down grass and just improve the whole overall condition of the course. And then I'm working with them to look at changing the actual course layout a bit so that we reduce the conflicts that we've had over the last couple, 2-3 years since we built the effluent pond. There's a kind of a narrow strip there that makes it difficult for disc golf players to maneuver when people are coming one direction and going against each other narrow. So we're talking about trying to reprogram that. I would like our staff, if we have time in the maintenance, to build some new benches and try to kind of elevate that course so that visitors have a really good experience when they come. So it's really been a partnership. We're seeing our staff kind of putting more time into it. But up until probably the last couple of years, it's really been taken care of mostly by the disc golf club.
My thought in asking that question was potentially partnering for a revenue to be the ones that mow, since the golf course is right there. I don't know how easy it would be to just keep going into the disc golf course like you guys do for the hospital and do a little partnership.
Yeah, that's a good question, but I'm not really super familiar with disc golf. I do believe a lot of it's just free to the users. I don't know if there's a cost, if there's anybody that does play disc golf, because I'm not.
The point of it.
It's really just a free service that's been offered to the folks, and I don't know if there's any capacity other than maybe a special tournament event where they may generate a little bit of revenue, but yeah, I don't see it as really a money generator at this point.
In fact, if they were authorized to maintain more, I know a lot of people would, but there's this quasi zone of like, some people go out and do it on their own.
Yeah, I share, it's a different group of people. We had an individual that was taking up residency on the course and spent a lot of time cutting in new trails, putting in new baskets, changing the course. Sometimes there was a little bit of conflict with the actual club, that they were kind of disappointed in what was taking place. So we try to tread lightly and not find ourselves in too big of a fight with each other, but there's at times it's a little bit of a challenge to make sure we're communicating with the appropriate people and not irritating the other people. So
Thank you.
Storm fund is the next one. And there's no significant changes other than, as I said earlier, when street funds were really challenged, we moved and the storm fund was a little bit healthier. We moved street sweeper or a portion of street sweeper costs into the storm. We've sensed now that the storm utility operation fund has been a little bit challenging. We've shifted those expenses back to just maintain the fund as it is.
30% increase.
There's no increases in rates in storm drainage. FCS recommended change. And then the industrial park is next. This one, we're cautiously optimistic that we're going to see. We are currently working on a purchase and sale agreement with an offer on 6.5 acres that will help revive the fund, the industrial park fund, and keep us back on pace on making our debt service for the debt that's owed on it. I've also we've contracted with Campbell Commercial to try to sell the remaining 3 parcels in the industrial park. And I was talking to an individual this last week that looks like we're going to see a couple more offers on a property that's in the works that they're working with the Campbell Group. So cautiously optimistic that we might be out of the industrial park land business, at least in the proper industrial park. We're still working on industrial park opportunity or industrial land opportunity on the Cleveland property that we purchased off of 6th Street. And that one's still looking promising. It's just taken a little bit longer to get to an agreement for sale.
How many properties are assumed to sell in this budget?
Right now, I think we just projected 1 sale. And that would remain 3 parcels that would be available for sale.
To cover debt service, and if we sold more, it just go into unappropriated ending balance.
Okay.
Because it's my understanding we can't pay this debt off if we had the money to pay for it. all in one. I guess we're locked into making the payment, so.
It's a bond that was used to finance this. And so you have some restrictions around paying off a bond early. And so you're not even at the prepayment stage at this point because this was refinanced in about 2017-ish. So what will happen is the money will come in and then we'll just provide debt service until the loan is paid off. But we'll want to make sure we get enough money to service that debt.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Capital projects funds. So, water SDCs is the first. And really, we just calculate the revenue that's coming in and balance it out to where we could potentially expend it completely through capital improvements and in contractual services. The money that's generated here is, SDCs that are collected from the water. It's a pretty significant amount of money that come into this fund. Right now, we're currently finishing up the water master plan that should be completed by the end of the year. That's being paid for out of the SDC fund. We also, in the past, have purchased reservoir sites. We've completed the necessary purchases for reservoirs, and now we'll look towards designing reservoirs and improving that based on as we judge the where development is going to take place. Right now, there's potentially some development that might take place at the end of Harrison and Ibsen on a chunk of property that's been brought into the urban growth boundary and currently under planning stages. That may drive building a reservoir on the recent purchased Alderman Road property. And then also council would be considering easements for a water line from the 22nd Street Reservoir, which is up above the existing reservoirs that would make a water line connection into the top of Taylor and allow us to gravity feed that area and repurpose the Taylor pump station eventually down the road. So we'll look towards our water master plan once it's completed to really guide the use of these funds and making the improvements. Some of the funds will be used to develop the Cleveland residential portion. We received or will receive $3 million from the state for infrastructure funds to help put in water, sewer, storm, and street to 35 acres off of Cleveland and South 4th Street. And we're currently in the process of working to finalize the agreement, the contract, and also designs have started for those upgrade projects. Hopefully by fall, phase 1 will be out to bid, and then early January, phase 2 of those improvements that will bring Cleveland and 4th Street connection and upgrade the utilities in that area. The other current project is we're extending our street from where it terminates in Sweet Lane into the industrial park. That project is underway, moving very quickly. They've about completed the excavation work for the road base itself and laid the base rock in. Next week, they're going to get started on putting in utility lines. So that project is underway, and SDC funds will be paying for the street, water, sewer, and storm component of that project. Okay. Really the same explanation as for all three of the wastewater and storm funds, but to share wastewater right now, we're looking at the R Street project and anything that we can help fund in the Cleveland property. The state infrastructure, because the wastewater SDC fund is lower, is probably one of the lowest. reserve funds that we have or SDC funds, we'll probably lean heavy on the state funding to put in the pump station and the sewer component for the Cleveland Street development or Cleveland property. And Storm Cleveland and our street also. Street SDCs, it's a pretty healthy fund. And looking at Cleveland, our street, potentially starting the design on the Cleveland Bridge. We'll need to put a bridge across the Coast Fork that will go into the industrial property and eventually make connection to Highway 99. So those would be projected resources or projects we would utilize this fund for. Hopefully there are opportunities to actually receive state and federal funding to build bridges. So once we have it designed and we know a cost, we'll aggressively seek funding out of other funding because bridges are very expensive.
What was the long-term goal of the Cleveland property again?
A long-term goal.
Mhm.
So there's two goals there. One is to the employment land. The 26 acres is right now we're working with an individual that would like to build a facility there that would be employ 100 people. It's kind of a manufacturing for wood products. And it's about $140 million investment. So if we could see that actually go on the tax rolls, that would generate eventually potentially $750,000 to $800,000 in brand new tax revenue for the general fund. And then the residential portion, which is the 35 acres, is we're working, the council goal is to create a mix of housing that would be affordable, middle, and it would be multi-unit, affordable multi-unit and single family home lots. And this upcoming meeting, we're going to present a proposal to them in executive session to see if it meets their expectations for the property.
And the comp plan actually designates Gateway Boulevard to continue down to Cleveland and then down around, and that's what phase
It's the transportation system plan that I shared with you. It actually goes that extension across into that property. Short term, some of the difficulties of actually getting across the railroad tracks and connecting with Highway 99. When we purchased the Cleveland property, we learned that there was a access easement for a road that would extend Rachel Road into the property. So we're looking at bringing the bridge across and then essentially make a left turn onto a future Rachel Road and use the existing
local
railroad crossing. So in the short term, we won't be looking at going across the railroad tracks. There's some very difficult constraints there that aren't insurmountable, but they're really difficult because of the queuing and the height of the railroad tracks, connecting grade. You know, it's just some really big challenges to put a new crossing in.
Didn't you also say those beams that you were able to get from ODOT way back when would be able to be utilized in that?
Yep. Yeah, we verified that those beams, the city acquired enough concrete beams to actually build the beam structure across the river. They are long enough to span from high water to high water. So that is will help us streamline the permitting process because we don't need to be inside the riparian zone or in needing to get special permits from the Corps of Engineers or any of that, DSL. So can I answer your questions? All right. So Parks SDCs, we've spent quite a bit of the money down on this to build a dog park and our commitment to the Bohemia Park project through the city. I don't really have any proposed projects for this upcoming year other than to make sure we're able to complete the Bohemia Park project and with the resources we have. Reserves. General reserve, I'll speak just to my portion of it. A lot of general reserve funds that are in for improvements help me accomplish improvements for our facilities, whether it's upgrading the heating system to roofing, or in this instance, we used it to move the log pavilion from Weyerhaeuser to Prospector Park. And we do have the brackets to bolt in as soon as we can get the staff time to get them installed. Hopefully we'll have that done in the near future with that pavilion and reopened. We've also used it for surveillance systems, remodels here at City Hall. This year, I've tried some of the things that we budgeted for this year. We had a brand new $90,000 large mower for parks that we just didn't feel that we wanted to protect the resources and the reserves moving forward. We also had money to start a phased approach of changing, installing new HVAC at the community center. But with our grant application in with Lane County to create a resiliency hub, I've kind of tightened up on proceeding with putting in those HVACs in hope that we do receive the state resiliency hub funding that would replace all 18 units at once. So we're just kind of trying to protect those reserves for unanticipated upgrades, like possibly having to replace a backup generator or that we must do.
What's the state resiliency hub? Is that budgeted this year? Budgeted this year with the assumption that we get that?
I think we did put it, where did we put the resiliency hub funding? Because I think we did, we're in here. I'll have to get back to you on that one, but it has been programmed in this, but, or did we hold off in case we didn't get it?
I think we didn't put it in. We were actually going to receive it yet.
Yeah.
But where would you put it? I guess.
Oh, where would I put it? It seems to me like maybe we might want to run it through the general reserve in the buildings and improvements line item.
So essentially you would actually receive, go ahead, put a supplemental budget together, recognizing revenue, and then making the appropriation through a supplemental budget process.
The HVAC expense, is that something that has to be taken care of this year, or is there time?
We're holding off, hoping that we receive these grant funds. We should know fairly soon. The application was due several months ago. So hopefully we'll have some news here within the next month. In June, I think is what they were anticipating. And then hopefully we'll be able to proceed with. It seemed like the folks at Lane County were very positive about their application and feel that it's a strong contender because it's resiliency hubs for, I believe, 6 resiliency hubs in Lane County, and we're just one of them. Jeez. Sorry about that.
So those air conditioning units were from the late 90s or early?
Yeah, the best I can tell is when the hospital purchased that building, and I don't know if they purchased it from Safeway, but when they Peace Health, I believe, purchased it about the time they were considering closing the old hospital, and then they created this rehab center here. I believe that was in the mid to late 90s is when those units were installed. So
it's one of those where you're looking at a lot of power savings when that does.
Yeah, so there's opportunity through Energy Trust and that's what we were looking at if we were paying the bill. We'll still look at it if the grant funds are received, but yeah, there's opportunities for energy savings there. Okay. Water reserve. Really, we try to once again, give us the ability to spend the resources if needed, but most of the time it just continues to get rolled over. Once again, I would say that in this fund and essentially all the utility funds, we're looking at replacing a backhoe. It's one of our more used pieces of equipment, and the newest one is 20 years old and the other one is 25. So they've served the city well. Also looking at if we're able to move forward with the reservoir there at one of those sites, we'd have the resources to build the reservoir. In wastewater reserve, we've been working on design 30% construction documents for the biosolids dryer. We're still in that process. Not 100% sure how we'll proceed, if we'll proceed with the current effort. We're finding that the current projected costs for that project are rather high. So we may be looking at continuing to look at options for finding a way to dry our solids on site instead of relying on a contractor to take our biosolids from us. We also are planning on going to bid, I believe here anytime. I was hoping by the end of the month, but with us getting closer to Memorial Day weekend, it might be the first part of June. It'll be a project to pipe burst and replace 3 backlot sewers. So when I say backlot sewers, there's a couple, 3 or 4 locations in Cottage Grove where our sewer main lines are between property owners on their back lots. And traditionally or typically now, we find that our sewer lines and utility services are within the streets, road right away. These backlot sewers are, people have fences built on them, they have structures built on them. They're very difficult to deal with. So we're looking at 3 pipe bursting projects that will come in and pull in a brand new line in the existing, and then all we have to do is the ground disturbance will be where we have to reconnect their lateral into the new main line. I just share with you that they're way overdue. The 3 that we're looking at is Polk, Madison, and Jefferson backlot sewers. We spend a lot of time unplugging plugs, running the sewer lines on a regular basis. And we've determined too in our infiltration tests through the winter that we were getting a lot of outside water into our existing sewer pipes because of their condition in these areas. Okay. Stormwater Reserve Fund, all I can say is thank goodness we had it because it helped us manage the ice storm. There'll be some budget adjustments coming to the council to appropriate kind of loans to the street, the general fund, and the wastewater fund for the contracted services that remove the ice storm damage. From that, it's about $2 million. I'm going to have a report to council this upcoming Monday that shows the amounts that we have to date and rescind the emergency. And I received a welcome email this morning from FEMA setting up a time to actually start the process to get reimbursement. So that was nice. So the intended item here is just to continue to support the R Street extension, the backhoe purchase, and also any Cleveland property upgrades related to the storm items, and then replenish the fund from the FEMA dollars.
You guys ever asked the community to donate equipment?
Donate equipment? Yeah, well, I mean, I haven't asked them, but we would turn down a donation. And I would share too that I'm always I'm somewhat frugal, and so each year we have I share this with some folks, but each year we're able to participate in a Lane County surplus auction, equipment auction, and it's from eWeb and all the various different entities, the city of Eugene. Well, 2 years ago, we actually purchased a large Vector truck. And a brand new Vector truck today, in today's world, depending on how you outfit it, $750,000 to $1 million. When we purchased this one for $35,000, we were able to put another $15,000 into it. So we have $50,000 into a truck that is in really good shape. I mean, Eugene took really good care of it, didn't wear it out. Actually rebuilt quite a bit of it before they decided to go ahead and upgrade. And it's actually our best Vector. So we have 2 large Vector trucks, and this one that we bought it at that auction is the truck of choice by our crew.
The smaller of the two?
I think it's actually larger of the two. And it's the yellow one, if you pay attention, that runs around.
And the FEMA, did they give any indication the level of reimbursement?
Well, my understanding is 75%. So we'll start the conversation. I have a meeting at 9 o'clock on Thursday, so I'll be able to give council a brief update at the council meeting as to what I've learned and the process forward. I don't know that they'll give me any timeframes of reimbursement or that, but whatever I learn, I'll pass it on to the council.
Can you negotiate that?
No, no. I wish, but no. And I mean, for the committee's information, the projected or the costs that we have to date are right at 2.9 million. And that includes everything. That includes, our employee labor, equipment, everything. And out of pocket, we're just shy of $2 million that we paid contractors and fuel and rock and various different items that we had to purchase. So we're eligible for up to 75% of what I understand would be eligible expenses. Our labor is not an eligible expense unless it was a labor that in overtime that wasn't budgeted. And like in this instance, we used golf course maintenance crew that are regular part-timers that are limited in pay. We put them on to 40 hours a week instead of 29. So those additional hours, I believe, are going to be eligible. So when we get all done with the process, I believe that we'll have enough expenses that the city contributed to offset the out-of-pocket costs that we experienced, maybe a little bit more. It'll all depend on what they deem is eligible for reimbursement. Okay. Building Inspection Reserve Fund. This is the reserve fund that we established and it built up to 113. And this last year, we weren't able to make a transfer that we expected. We'd like to try to transfer any over surplus that we've had. In past years, we've contributed to the fund that we use to assist nonprofits with building permits and SDCs. But that fund has been fully funded and we haven't had to make any transfers. We can use this for equipment purchases or we could use it to be a shortfall for our operating expenses if they're more than our revenues. And if we get to build a new sawmill, that fund will drastically increase because it's an incredible amount of permit fees for that estimated.
Sawmill? Pardon? Is that the industrial land?
Well, yeah, that would be on the industrial side, but even the housing and multifamily and stuff that we might potentially see happen in the next year and a half would generate some significant building permit fees that we generate on a typical house in Cottage Grove, just the inspection fees is about $7,000. That's electrical, building, mechanical, plumbing, portion of an overall $25,000 to $27,000 permit. So the rest of it's SDC fees. But, if we had 100 houses that we permitted in Cottage Grove, we'd see $700,000 in revenue. Instead, we're I think we permitted maybe 4 or 5 houses this past year. And so, Oregon Community Credit Union, a remodel here at the new proposed boutique hotel, some of the other developments that we've seen of what's carried the fund up to date. It hasn't been housing starts.
These other jurisdictions, how I think it showed it in the permitting, but are Coburg and Bonita and Crestwell seeing more single family housing?
Crestwell's been a lot of commercial. So when I say commercial, they have pardon?
They have a moratorium.
Yeah, they have a moratorium on housing starts at the present time in certain locations of their city. But they've experienced, like a new Taco Bell. They're in the process of permitting potentially a McDonald's. They're in the process. They assisted living with also memory care facility that's under construction. So those have boosted Crestwell's. Then Bonita, they've seen a lot of housing starts, brand new houses, along with Coburg. I think we did. There's a developer that's permitted 25 new homes this past year in Coburg, and we've seen as many, if not more, in Bonita. So those areas have seen residential because they have residential land. I think my belief here in Cottage Grove is that we just don't have very many single family lots available to purchase. So that's kind of been a constraint. So we're seeing a small 22 lot development that's under construction right now. The utilities are being put in. That's the one that potentially could bring in 15 duplexes here in the very near future. And then the effort the city's making with the Cleveland residential property. And then there's a housing subdivision that's in the works off of the end of Ibsen. I don't know how many lots it is, but there'll be a few there. So we're starting to see a little bit of subdivision and single family lots being created, but there's very few right now for sale. And the ones that are sale are challenging because the high costs, they're steep, or they have some geographical constraints that are making them expensive. I think we're on to last little section here, which is the trust funds.
So I'll start out with debt service. It's a clearinghouse type of fund. Each individual fund transfers money into the debt service fund, and then the debt is paid from this fund. So it's very transparent on how much debt the city is paying for every year. So you're not looking for every individual budget trying to find out what they pay for that bond, what they pay for this loan. It's all included in this fund. And at the end of the day, at June 30, we should have zero monies left. It's transferred in, spent, spent. And it's an easy way for us to also make sure that we're paying making those debt service payments timely. Housing assistance cost. Housing cost assistance fund. This was established by the city council, and as Faye described, we transferred money in from the general fund and the building inspection fund. The goal was to fund it at a $200,000 level. And as there would be requests for that, we would have money to help. And it was for low income housing.
Yeah, it's for nonprofits to provide low income housing opportunities, offset their SDC and building permit costs. And it's an application process that gets approved by council.
And then you have your special trust fund. And it's going to account for all of the donations that the city receives for a specific purpose. So again, we're tracking that if it's not all spent in 1 year, there's interest allocated to it and it's budgeted to be spent the next year on for the purpose that it was donated for.
I'm just curious, going back to the housing costs, like,
I'm sorry.
is there a definition of what housing is? Like, could this be something if they were used? I did not listen to the 18th conversation, but hearing a recap of what was discussed, is there an opportunity from some fund like this to support a property that would be the future housing of the unhoused and support whatever, I don't know, street to there or bike paths or
I'm not
double?
Yeah, I'm not going to tell you that it can never be used for that, but as it's set up now and established by the city council, it wasn't designated for that purpose.
It's to build housing.
That's why I asked about what
It's,
the
and I
definition of housing was.
believe it's low income housing and it's a nonprofit, so we've seen cottage villages, they applied and received some of it. We'll probably see Habitat for Humanity, they're in the process of producing I think 4 new homes in the community. I know there's others that have gotten money, but they're all
Good.
Homes for Good. Oh, I think we did use it for the veterans housing project over here too, yeah.
Yeah, I think the original intent, and it's the cottage village, is for low income.
So a few yurts wouldn't count, like having a few yurts out or something, like this is actual to
No,
build.
homes qualified.
Any homes qualified, you know,
We specified a definition.
well, the council approves every application, so I mean, certainly that is something we would weigh in on an applicant, but I think the intent was
Part of it is to get on the future on the tax roll. It's stuff that gets built.
exactly.
Cool, thanks.
Thank you. That special trust fund, I think I kind of described what that was used for. And then you have an armory special trust fund that has been used for the improvements that was loan funded to start with. And we're pretty much to the tail end of what's available.
And as we go out and seek more grants for the armory, that's where they would actually be funneled through and incorporated.
Any other questions on the budget as well?
Looking at the special trust, I mean, looks like there's been a project for multiple years about a sidewalk.
Oh, I can explain that one. So at some future date, the church is going to need to replace that sidewalk where there's a tree or there was a tree. And so they said, here, we will pay you now. We weren't ready to do the whole project at the time. So when that actually happens, they've already paid their money and we've been collecting interest on it over the days.
It's good.
So again,
Concrete.
it's a really specialized donation to the city for that.
My comments just broadly are thank you for all the work you guys did in advance to prepare this and the cuts that were done in advance, knowing the state that we're in right now. Just this being my first time, it seems like a lot of due diligence was put into it, a lot of care. And, I really appreciated hearing all the community services and community promotions details and all the letters of support for the library. All of that is very helpful and I think making informed decisions. My overall impression is that we provide really high quality of various services and high quality of, treatment plant and, having a golf course is kind of cool. And it's, eventually will pay for itself fully. And so it doesn't seem like we're in a great position, but we're in a far better position coming into it with the decisions you guys have made so far and what you're proposing. I personally don't see any drastic changes that really should be made, except in looking at the overviews of the general fund. as much as I love libraries, it is one of the few that went up. And I think there are more critical services, especially hearing the dispatch conversation. Like there's more critical, urgent areas that might need more attention than the library. And I would just recommend that maybe they seek some additional grants to offset and just not increase, maybe just level out from last year, but not increase, just in the interest of kind of the fairness of the rest of the budget. And then I would suggest a reduction, slight reduction, maybe about $5,000 in the community promotions. And that is with regard to, it could be from anywhere. I don't really care exactly where, but I would recommend the, like the farmer's market, since they are turning a profit and they are funding an individual at double time, so they're full-time now. And I don't know if the city should be necessarily doing that now, if that was more intended for the short term. So those are my comments on the overall budget. Thank you.
Are there any other observations or suggestions?
Yeah, I agree. And, you know, it's funny, I do support the library. It's not like I'm, you know, thinking, boy, we need to close that thing. But I remember for years and years, you know, us operating on many fewer staff. And I also look at the health of our general fund, and I'm looking at where, you know, if this was in my agency, where would I be looking to make cuts to build the health of that fund? I'm happy to go with the flow for this year, but I really want to encourage staff to be watching, you know, as this fiscal year progresses, you know, to make shifts if necessary to maintain that health of that fund. Just because we budget something does not mean that it has to be expended. You know, that's the management of the budget, is that, you know, if we realize, you know, hey, this is not turning out the way we are, I'm hoping that we can make some adjustments as necessary. And I'm hoping this group has given some guidance on what we kind of look at as far as, you know, the critical services of our city. I'll just kind of leave it at that.
Mindy?
We have
Was that part of my name I heard?
yes.
Sorry about that. I apologize for this. I wish I was there in person. I echo those concerns too. I think that the farmer's market was something that we were kind of helping them to get started, and I think we should kind of let them go on their own now. And the library, from what I looked at, and I could be wrong, but it looks like they're the only one that really got a significant increase in their budget, and everybody else has really tried real hard to make a lot of cuts. I think that some of that money should go towards the police dispatch. That's a critical infrastructure, and when you call 911 and you get put on hold, unless you've been there, that's very frustrating. And that can be potentially a huge problem as we need those services more and more all the time. So I would like to see us help out PD with more dispatch and officers, and not take the library completely out, but do cut that back a little bit. And that's my take on it.
Just to play devil's advocate, I think something that Alex said the other day resonated with me, that places like the library are the upstream to the police department. So if we're thinking about cutting back services to the library, it's good to know that maybe those kids who would normally go to the library to play on the computers and hang out, if they're not accessible, we could actually be creating more work for the police department because they don't have that upstream, and that's something to do. So just coming full circle and creating that conversation as well.
Hands up, sir. There's
a hand.
So, Councilor.
Thank you, everyone. And again, I'm sorry I can't be there. I think you can hear in my voice, I'm not feeling so great. But I could actually hear the meeting really well, so I appreciated that. Um, I will say I appreciate all the hard work that the staff put into this budget. It was a really difficult budget to compile, to read through and see those critical changes. Um, I I hear the concerns about dispatch, and in particular, I know being on the League of Oregon Cities General Government Policy Committee, there's a concern about rising costs for police dispatchers anyway, because they're in a new category of emergency response. I don't recall the exact details, but they can retire earlier too. So I wonder how many of our current staff um, are near retirement, because you can retire at a little bit of a younger age. Um, what I would recommend is, since we can't even fill the 2 vacancies we have right now, is um, consider that for a future supplemental budget. If we get fully staffed to 6, let's see a supplemental budget adding that 7th, so that we can really be building our workforce, but not make that change right now when we still have vacancies to inform. And then the other thing I wanted to add is that I know for the farmers market, they use the city's investment as match for other grants. So I don't know what, there weren't enough copies of the handout that the farmers market gave out, so I didn't take one. But I know they do use that money for match for other grants. So it would reduce their leverage to bring in other revenue if we don't fund them. And then it's my understanding the increased, while it looks like an increase in library services overall, it's rebuilding from the diminished capacity that happened when we removed it from being a department head position, and also basically closed it due to COVID. I understand we have really tough budget decisions in front of us. I do support allowing the new city manager to get things kind of tightened up and have staff really tighten things up this year and see where we can come out at the end of next year before we make significant cuts.
Thank you. I would like to echo a lot of the statements made tonight. As Councillor Fleck stated, the library did run with, I believe, just about half staff of what we have now. And so I'm not saying that we should go back to that, but I am saying I do see the value in amping up our finance department. I know that they have struggled to stay on task to do the work that that is put in front of them. And I know Public Works has had a substantial increase in their work with our in-house situation. And PD, of course, with the staffing issues that they have been struggling with, and dispatch. Also, the farmers market, I do support them. I think that is a great addition, especially to the downtown in Cottage Grove. However, when I was looking at their financials, I know Councillor Jerry, you didn't receive it, but their manager, it went from a part-time to full-time. And so it doubled what they are paid. And so now that they are turning such a substantial profit to pay a full-time position like that, it makes me rethink our $5,000 investment. And I believe that it was always, I would like to see us give money to projects that are a hand up to get started and not a continuing. I don't think that that is the city's place to do that. I think, especially in times like this, when we are in a budget crunch, we need to look at our safety, our finances. Those are things that are back to basics that we need to get to. And so that's my 2 cents on this, that I think that we may want to revisit that. And if it's not at this time, I think that I would love for our city manager to revisit that within this next 6 months and really take a good look at where we can make cuts that are right for our city at this time. And because it's some serious crunch, and I think it's going to get a little worse before it gets better, unfortunately.
So I'm looking at the library services and I'm seeing a difference in the budget of $36,000 from the expenditures of last year to this year. Is that ballpark?
I thought it was closer to 50.
There were some significant wage increases.
$36,140.
46.
Well, wages are in the library.
Mhm.
If you look at the librarian line, that's where you see the wage increase, because the head librarian doesn't change. The librarian line changes.
Are they labor employees? Susan?
Unit.
Represented.
Again, the first year I served on the budget committee, the real surprise was the cost of healthcare and retirement. Oftentimes, healthcare exceeds retirement.
The employment costs is where most of it is.
Mhm.
Majority of the increases in personnel costs.
$46,000. Did we ever decide if it was a one-time expenditure originally for the pool and if we were going to scale that back?
It's currently in the budget at the same level of support as it was last year.
Right,
Did not increase it to the $90,000.
right.
Requested it.
And he said if he didn't receive that, then patrons would be paying $8.
He said he was gonna cut programs. Well, very first, he said that, yeah, the cost would be
Okay.
closer to $834 or something like that. I feel like I got that much more clarity when he came. But
The pool is important, that we should scale it back a little.
I think out of fairness, I would really love to have our staff talk with the school district folks and really have a conversation about, hey, our general fund is having some challenges. What services can we get for what amount so that we can have a more informed decision? Because I certainly wasn't going to support increasing it. I remember, kind of like we're facing tough times. But on the other hand, I also know what a value that is to our citizens. So like I said, I think I would really encourage our staff. That's kind of another area that we've mentioned that we really would like to focus on. Okay, what is the value? And, is this something that we should continue funding? But I'd really like not at the 11th hour to, yank that out from under them if possible without, like I said, some conversation.
I mean, that's definitely a conversation we can have.
does that usually get paid? Is it throughout the year?
I try to hold off until I know we have taxes coming in or cash flow.
November.
December.
I think it's a
15th.
one-time.
Those conversations could be,
Yes, we have time for that.
is it true that, pretty much all of these are, if you have direction on it, and you say, hey, if you can come up with a right-sized fit, then it's a line item to budget for, but it doesn't have to be expended. Think conversations we can hear back, we can make those decisions with more information. Is that fair?
It's very fair. And I want to say that Mike and I have discussed doing quarterly budget reports to the city council. So it's here, this is where we're at. This is what, in September, I'll have a cash carry forward figure for you to actually see. And continue that until, you're tired of hearing about it, or you have a plan in front of you and you're watching how that plan is working. And if that 3 months in, we say, yeah, we're really short, we didn't hit that $2 million mark that we thought we would. What else do we need to do to adjust our budget to keep it in line? And trying also to build that unappropriated fund balance up. I will tell you what's in there now is not enough to get us out of the woods. Can we do it all in 1 year? Heavens, no. But we need to work towards that and having the council set goals that are more than what we have currently, so that we don't find ourselves in the same position with expenditures going up and being spent because they were budgeted to be spent, because all we had to have at the end of the year was the $500,000.
Yeah.
So.
And understand that city staff is already having the conversation about how do we try to maintain the current level of service at a lower cost? How do we reduce our costs but still provide the same level of service to the public? Now, that's not always possible, but that's certainly our goal. And to just kind of put a bow on what Bert was saying, guys, we don't want to be in this situation next year. We don't want to be in this situation in the future. We found ourselves in a hole. We stopped digging. We build a plan to get out of the hole, but we want to make sure we don't get back in it.
So I guess I would just sum that up by saying my support, adopting the budget and making those discretionary choices with the up-to-date information as we go. I also appreciate all the work and reiterate for the staff that came in to share and give us all that information. Thank you.
Thank you. We do have a resolution prepared tonight if you're able to consider this for us. It's resolution number BC10. It's to approve the budget from the budget committee. Next step would be to have another hearing for the 6 shared revenues in front of the city council, and then for adoption, I believe it's slated for June 24th. And there's only, there are some changes that can be made from budget committee approval to city council approval and adoption, but they're going to be limited as far as actually changing the dollar amounts, and it's within percentages. So there are some things that I think it's good guidance to have your city manager looking at where we're at and what the numbers are really telling us, and making those inline adjustments, as I would call them, as we go throughout this next fiscal year.
If folks are ready, I will make a motion, but I don't want to stymie any conversation. Seeing none, I will move adoption of resolution BC 10, approving the budget for fiscal year 24-25, authorizing the city's permanent tax rate and recommending adoption to the city council.
We have a motion with a second. But a yay or nay, or is it a roll call for the resolution? Is there any further discussion on this motion or any other items related to the budget?
So we just okaying quarterly review of the budget by the city council. Is that?
I'm also recommending that we sign off on this version of the budget.
Okay.
Pass it on to the city.
Okay, I'll second.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the mayor had her hand up.
Bert, can you clarify when you said that we could make limited changes? So it's on a percentage basis?
It would be on a dollar basis, and it's outlined in state budget law. And I don't have that right in front of me right now, but I'll be glad to provide that to you as to what can be changed dollar wise between what a budget committee approves and what the city council has the ability to do.
Thank you.
Any further comment? I guess.
Be confused.
City Recorder, will you please call the roll?
Did you call my name? I'm I.
I did.
How do you vote?
You might ask again.
Mindy, is your mic on? Or do you need a mic to talk? Oh,
Yeah, I didn't out.
Mr. Dreer, did you hear the request for you to clarify your vote on the motion?
Danny's indicating, let's try broadcasting it louder through the speaker. Councilor Drew, what's your vote on the motion?
Aye.
Thank you. Councilor Urban?
Aye.
Councilor Fleck?
Aye.
Councilor Merity?
Aye.
Councilor Savage?
Aye.
Councilor Stennett?
Aye.
Mayor Solsby?
Aye.
Thank you. Committee member Amanda Gilbert? Danny Solsby?
Nay.
Charlene Sales?
Aye.
Amber Baylor?
Aye.
Gary Manley?
Aye.
Bernie Donner?
Nay.
Is it appropriate to ask the concerns of the nay votes or, I mean, I totally respect the right to vote nay. I'm just kind of curious. You know,
I'll be glad to. Yeah, I was gonna say something, but it's really hard to hear everything and communicate back, but I'm concerned why the citizens are gonna see that the library is the only one that's budget that went up and everybody else took cuts, but yet we approved it. And that really concerns me that we didn't try to make some cuts all across the board to try to use these funds a little bit better. But that's my concern. I'd like to see us do a little bit there. I didn't want to cut the library completely, but at least not raise their budget. And that's my take on it.
thank you.
I was gonna say the exact same thing.
Thank
You
you.
know, I feel that it is primarily safety and that the library is, okay, and that's.
Yeah, thank you though. I appreciate it.
Yes, I just want to reiterate, as Bert said, that we will be providing the council with quarterly financial reports going forward. And I don't know whether you want a motion to, direct that or agree to it or whatever. But that's what Bert and I will be providing you via city council. And, encourage budget committee members to also be part of those discussions, when we do those quarterly presentations.
I would recommend we put it in the work plan, so that we keep track of that. Sure.
Are you guys also just taking in notes, I guess, of what we've all commented on? Okay.
Mayor Solsby would like to comment.
Yes, I actually got flustered with my mute button. It wouldn't come on and I meant to vote nay as well. And I don't even know if I can change that now, but I share those same concerns. And I would like to see a motion made to make sure that we revisit this.
So I'm not sure the budget committee has the authority to direct the council to do this. I think this is something that'd be better brought up at a council meeting.
We're happy either way.
I think everybody wants it to happen. So I don't think this is any controversial thing. I just don't know that a motion here is the appropriate place.
And so, yeah, we can kind of consider it as we have direction for the next council meeting where this will be discussed, so.
We say the budget committee wishes to direct council to ensure that there are quarterly budget reports presented to council by staff.
Or at least recommend.
As a practical matter, you're going to get them whether you have them or not.
Would it also be appropriate to say that any line items that were cut, whether it's pool or library, those funds are redirected to the safety department, the police department, dispatch and things like that?
We have to appropriate the funds to do that.
Okay, that's.
At this point, we have to go into the unappropriated ending balance.
Okay.
I would suggest that later on, as needs arise, if we needed to do that, you'd have funds maybe available to make those budget changes as you go. It's kind of hard now to direct something that hasn't occurred yet. But I understand what you're saying.
Right, so we want to see increase in the safety side. And some of these long-term expenditures that just reoccur year after year after year without much review.
And it may be that after 3 months in, Mike and I are looking at this saying, okay, we didn't hit the mark. And now we really need to just put this back in unappropriated fund balance if we make these cuts, so that next year you're not making even further cuts.
Right.
Okay, so that's what I'm looking at direction. Right now, what is required by law is that the budget committee makes approval of the budget, passing it on to the city council. And that's what your resolution does. And any outside motion from that, I don't really know the authority of the budget committee to do that. But we've heard you, we've taken notes, and I can tell you my boss will see that it's done.
I met him tonight, he's pretty cool.
Yep, got a comment from Danny.
Yeah, I agree with Mike and Bert on this. I don't think this council has any, or this budget committee has any authority to do that, but my concern is that the council gets busy with other things and it gets kind of forgotten, and you get on with other business and we go on down the road, and then pretty soon we're back here next year doing this again. So I really want to challenge the city council to make sure that they're diligent about staying on top of this for the citizens and being responsible with that as we're trying to make some cuts and get through this and build that back up. So thank everybody for their patience with us being away, and sorry we had to be away this week.
Full vote. So I would like to express my appreciation for all the budget committee members, especially the citizen members. We on council sign up for lots of meetings, and I really appreciate your taking the time out to serve the community at large by volunteering for this job, and also the diligence that you've shown in going through this budget. This is probably one of the most in-depth conversations from my 3 years experience of discussing the city budget, and very much appreciate all the insights you brought as citizens and council members willing to engage in this process. So thank you for giving up 3 nights of your life for the good of the city.
I would echo that. I think I've been on budget 22 of the last 24 years, and I don't ever remember going 3 meetings. In fact, there were many where we voted at one night to adopt budgets. So thank you guys for all of your time.
Unless there's any other observations or comments, I would entertain a motion that we can adjourn this meeting.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? You opposed? Thank you.
Let's stay longer. Sure.
It's gonna be okay.
You.